Aman stood before the vast glass window of his high-rise office. The city sprawled beneath him like a circuit board of endless possibility. This space, filled with the gentle hum of computers and the soft rustle of blueprints, was the physical manifestation of a dream he had nurtured since he was a boy sketching houses on the backs of old textbooks. He was the quiet force behind Apex Designs, a firm whose name was becoming synonymous with innovative and human-centric architecture. To the outside world, his partner Rohan was the dazzling frontman, the silver-tongued visionary who captivated clients and investors with an almost magnetic charm. But within these walls, everyone who mattered knew the truth. The soul of every project, the elegant solutions to complex problems, the subtle curves that made a building feel not just seen but felt, all originated from Aman's meticulous mind and his drawing board. He was the architect of dreams, and he believed, with every fiber of his being, in the power of his work to speak for itself. He found a deep, personal satisfaction in the process of creation, in the alchemy of turning a blank page into a living, breathing space. The late nights spent hunched over detailed schematics, the countless cups of coffee grown cold, the relentless pursuit of perfection. These were not sacrifices to him, but privileges. He was building his legacy, one line at a time, and he trusted Rohan to be the bridge that connected his silent world of design to the noisy world of commerce. Their partnership felt like a perfect, unbreakable equation, a synergy where his quiet genius was perfectly complemented by Rohan's public fire. He never felt the need to claim the spotlight in meetings or take credit in interviews, secure in the knowledge that the integrity of his designs and the success they brought were testament enough to his value. His identity was so deeply woven into the fabric of their shared success that the idea of it being torn apart never once crossed his mind. He was building a monument not just for the city, but for his own life's purpose, and he worked with the unwavering faith of a man who believed his foundation was made of solid rock. The future was a blueprint he was already drawing, full of even grander projects and deeper artistic exploration, all within the protective and celebrated shell of the company he had helped create from a single shared idea in a dusty university dorm room. The world was theirs for the taking, and Aman was content to shape it from the shadows, his pencil his only voice, his creations his only necessary explanation. The air in the conference room was electric with anticipation. The Sky Garden Tower was not just another project. It was Aman's magnum opus, a structure designed to breathe, with vertical forests and a passive ventilation system that mimicked a termite mound's efficiency. He sat slightly back from the gleaming table, his heart a steady drum of pride. The investors, a panel of serious-faced men and women, were captivated. Rohan was in his element, pacing at the front of the room, his voice a persuasive instrument. He spoke of vision, of the future, of a new paradigm for urban living. Aman watched, content in his role as the silent creator. Then the presentation shifted to the core architectural schematics, the pages filled with Aman's distinctive, precise line work. Rohan paused, letting the beauty of the designs sink in. He placed his hands flat on the table and leaned forward, his tone shifting to one of profound, personal gravity. "This," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "is more than a building. This is a piece of my soul. I spent countless solitary nights wrestling with these very forms, knowing that the world wasn't ready for such a radical departure." A cold knot tightened in Aman's stomach. He felt the eyes of his junior colleagues who had watched him burn the midnight oil for months, flicker towards him, but he was frozen, unable to meet their gaze. Rohan continued, now fully embodying the role of the lone, tormented genius. He explained the complex airflow diagrams and the bio-integrated support structures as if they were his own children, using the very technical language Aman had painstakingly taught him over the years. The investors nodded, their admiration for Rohan growing with every stolen insight. The betrayal was not a sudden explosion, but a slow, chilling immersion, like being lowered into ice water. Every word from Rohan's mouth was a lie, but they were lies the room wanted to believe. Amon's mind raced, a torrent of protests and explanations forming and dying before they could reach his lips. He saw the triumphant, almost imperceptible glint in Rohan's eye as he glanced his way, a look that was both a challenge and a dismissal. In that moment, Amon understood the truth. His words would be seen as the desperate, jealous ramblings of a spurned subordinate. His evidence, his early sketches, his notes, they would mean nothing against Rohan's charismatic performance. The foundation of his world, built on trust and shared ambition, crumbled into dust. A profound silence descended upon him, not of shock, but of a terrible, absolute clarity. He would not beg for his due. He would not explain the theft to an audience that had already applauded the thief. Slowly, deliberately, he pushed his chair back. The sound was small and sharp in the hushed room. He stood, his movements calm and deliberate, collected his worn leather portfolio from the empty seat beside him, and walked out. He did not look back. The only sound was the soft, final click of the door closing behind him. The world outside the glass tower was a blur of noise and motion, a stark contrast to the frozen stillness inside Amon. He walked without a destination, the weight of his portfolio feeling like an anchor tied to a drowned past. The city, once a canvas of his ambitions, now felt alien and hostile. He found himself on a park bench, watching pigeons fight over crumbs, a hollow echo of the corporate battle he had just lost without throwing a single punch. In the days that followed, the fallout was swift and brutal. Rohan, a master of narrative, had already spun the story. Whispers of Amon's unstable genius and his inability to handle the pressure of a high-profile project slithered through the industry. His phone, once a constant stream of calls and messages, fell into a profound silence. Emails from concerned colleagues went unanswered by him, not out of spite, but because he had nothing to say. Explanations were a form of begging, and chasing after his ruined reputation felt like a betrayal of the self he was now forced to become. He packed his personal belongings from the office after hours, a ghost in his own life. He did not seek a new position at a rival firm. Instead, he took a nondescript job as a draftsman in a small, utilitarian office that designed functional, uninspired warehouses and strip malls. The work was mind-numbing, but it was a kind of anesthetic. It paid his rent and demanded nothing of his soul, leaving his mind free to wander in the wilderness of his own thoughts. His small apartment became his monastery. The silence he had carried out of that conference room was no longer empty. He began to fill it. He discovered the writings of the ancient Stoics. He read about controlling his perceptions, about accepting what he could not change and focusing all his energy on what he could. His own character, his judgments, his actions. The betrayal, the loss, the anger, these were external events, indifferent things. His power lay not in changing what had happened, but in his response to it. He stopped seeing himself as a victim of Rohan's ambition and began to see himself as a student of a harsh but necessary lesson. His silence became his shield, protecting him from the poison of gossip and bitterness. It also became his forge. In the quiet hours he started sketching again, not for a client or a deadline, but for himself. He drew structures that were not just buildings but ecosystems, ideas born from his new philosophy of resilience and inner strength. He was no longer the architect of dreams for others. He was the silent architect of his own rebuilding, laying a new foundation, one built not on sand, but on the unshakable rock of self-mastery. 5 years is a long time in the relentless march of a city. Skylines change, trends evolve, and memories fade. Amon's life had settled into a rhythm of quiet purpose. His days were spent at the drafting board, his evenings in study and private creation. He was a ghost in the machine of the architectural world, anonymous and unconcerned with its fleeting accolades. Then the Viridia Initiative was announced. It was a project of staggering scale and ambition, a self-sustaining coastal community designed to withstand rising sea levels and serve as a model for future cities. The international competition drew submissions from every celebrated firm on the globe. News reports buzzed with speculation, and most pundits pointed to Rohan's apex designs as the inevitable winner, praising his firm's bold and visionary recent work. Aman observed this from a distance, feeling no anger, only a quiet sense of detachment. The problem presented by the Viridia brief, however, captivated his mind. It was a puzzle that spoke directly to the philosophical and practical depths he had been exploring in his exile. While others thought in terms of steel and glass, Aman thought in terms of roots and resilience. While others designed for spectacle, he designed for survival and serenity. He worked not in the office but in the quiet of his apartment, his drawings piling up. He conceived of a city that was not imposed upon the land but woven into it. His designs used ancient principles of passive cooling and water management, combined with cutting-edge biomimicry. He envisioned a community that produced its own food and energy, where every resource was part of a closed, sustainable loop. It was architecture not as a statement of power, but as an act of harmony. When he was finished, he did not submit it under his own name. That man belonged to a past life. Instead, he chose a single meaningful word, karma. The submission was digital, anonymous, and entered through the competition's blind portal. There was no fanfare, no press release, no charismatic presentation. There was only the work. The designs, dense with intelligence and a profound understanding of human and environmental need, landed in the judge's inbox with the quiet force of a truth that had been waiting to be heard. They were a stark, brilliant contrast to the soaring, energy-hungry towers proposed by his competitors. The judges, weary of empty grandeur, found themselves captivated by the quiet, powerful logic and deep empathy of the anonymous entry. The seed, planted in silence, had taken root in the most fertile of grounds. The gala was a spectacle of light and sound, a gathering of the world's architectural elite. Giant screens displayed renderings of the finalist projects, each more audacious than the last. In the center of the room, surrounded by a sycophantic circle, stood Rohan. He accepted congratulations with a practiced humility, his eyes already gleaming with the certainty of victory. His firm's proposal was a marvel of technological showmanship, a city of shimmering, interconnected spires. The air was thick with the scent of his impending triumph. The host finally took the stage and the room fell into a hush. After a drumroll that echoed the beating of 100 hearts, the winner was announced. The Viridia Initiative is awarded to the submission. Karma. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Rohan's smile did not vanish, but it stiffened, becoming a brittle mask. Who was Karma? The host continued, and now we invite the visionary behind this revolutionary design to the stage. All eyes scanned the room. From a quiet corner in the back, a figure stood. He was not dressed in a tailored tuxedo but in a simple, dark suit. He moved with a calm, unhurried grace that seemed to push the noise of the room away. As he walked into the light, a collective gasp went up. It was Aman. Older, his face etched with the lines of quiet endurance, but unmistakably him. The silence was absolute. He ascended the steps and stood at the podium, his posture relaxed yet radiating an unshakable authority. He did not look at the audience, nor did he glance at Rohan. He simply began to speak about the Viridia project. His voice was low and steady, devoid of theatricality, yet it commanded complete attention. He spoke of resilient foundations, of symbiotic systems, and of building a legacy that would endure long after the applause faded. It was a masterclass in vision, delivered with the power of deep conviction. Then a disruption. Rohan, his face a thundercloud of fury and humiliation, stormed up the side steps and lunged for a microphone. "This is a fraud," he shouted, his voice cracking. "He stole this. He's explaining my own ideas. Ask him where he was for the last 5 years. Ask him why he left his own firm." The room held its breath. All eyes swung back to Aman. This was the moment. This was the confrontation everyone had waited for. But Aman did not turn. He did not flinch. He finished his sentence about integrated water reclamation, and then, as if Rohan were mere static interference, he continued his presentation. He never acknowledged the outburst. He never offered an explanation for the past. His silence towards Rohan was a wall of immense, impenetrable strength. The contrast was devastating. On one side, a man begging for a conflict, frantic and exposed. On the other, a man building the future, calm and untouchable. The audience understood everything without a single word of accusation being spoken. The victory was not marked by a loud celebration but by a profound and quiet shift. In the days that followed, the architectural world did not just see Aman as a talented designer who had been wronged. They saw him as a figure of immense moral and intellectual strength. The footage of Rohan's frantic outburst and Aman's serene indifference became a parable in itself, studied in business schools and discussed in design studios. People finally understood that his 5-year silence was not a period of hiding, but of metamorphosis. He had not been chasing redemption. He had been building a new self, one that no longer needed the validation he had once lost. The Viridia initiative broke ground, and Aman's leadership was a reflection of his philosophy. He was not a charismatic figurehead giving inspiring speeches, but a calm, present force on the site. He listened more than he spoke. His instructions were clear, simple, and always focused on the integrity of the work. The project began to rise from the coast, not as a monument to a single man's ego, but as a testament to a collective, harmonious vision. It was a city that felt alive, where the buildings and the environment existed in a silent, mutual agreement. His silence had become his ultimate superpower. It had protected his energy from being drained by bitterness and gossip. It had sharpened his focus, allowing him to see solutions others missed in their noise. It had given him the space to develop a vision so pure and powerful that it needed no salesman. He had mastered the greatest victory, the one the Stoics preached, the victory over himself. He controlled his reactions, his desires, and his need for explanation. In doing so, he had not only reclaimed his legacy but had built one that was far more enduring. He was no longer just an architect of buildings, but an architect of a resilient spirit, a living example that true power is not seized from the world, but cultivated in the unshakable silence within.